Who you are, what you're running for, and what party you're running for.
Okay, my name is Elizabeth Johnston, and I am running as a Democrat for McLean County Board, District 5.
Okay, and what are some of your accomplishments that you've had so far on the board, and what are some of the goals that you'd like to see happen if you get back on?
So a couple of things that I've really worked hard on the board since I've been on. Really wanted to, my first goals were to increase kind of access and some transparency of the board. We still have work to do, but really moving the meetings to 5:30 in the evening instead of 9 a.m. on a Tuesday was really helpful for people to be able to access the board meetings. We also, when we had COVID and we did the videos, we have been able to retain that so that people can watch from home, people can catch up on it later, and they can see what was actually happening. So that's a big piece of like, as like increasing accessibility. I spent 5.5 years working on public comment, and finally, it is now, you can show up the day of the meeting, 15 minutes before, and sign up for public comment. Whereas before it was at minimum 24 hours, at maximum, if it wasn't on the agenda, it was 2 business days. So it was quite a long, kind of arduous process. Now you can walk in and do that. So that's kind of important to me as far as accessibility. Some of the other things is really working on getting voices to the table and making sure that we have as fair a process as possible. After the last election, I did negotiate and we got 50-50, because we were 50-50, but we got 50-50 on the leadership, we got 50-50 on the membership of the different committees, so that we had an equal voice, and that was really important to me. The other piece that I'm really, really proud of, and it was a bipartisan effort, was to create a redistricting process that was drawn by voters, not by the politicians. So that was huge for me. I don't know if we're the first county that did it, but we are one of the few counties that do it that way. I'd really like to see it happen for the next census as well. That we just kind of keep that going. If anything, I'd love for us to be sort of a beacon for that kind of movement, for fair elections, and allowing people a choice, and not gerrymandering them into districts where they don't have choice.
My next question is, obviously the budget is coming up within like the next month or two, right? Is there currently an increase in funding for the mobile mental health crisis teams in that budget that you're aware of?
I haven't looked at the budget. Campaigning has taken up, but that is kind of my goal for this weekend, is to deep dive into that. It's about 500 pages. A lot of the things that we do want to see happening moving forward is we do have money allocated for mental health that's been sitting in an escrow account essentially, and it's the community's money, and it deserves to be in the community doing good.
And how much money is that escrow account?
The last estimate I heard was about $11 million that I'd really like to see back in the community. That's what we collected it for, and that's where I wanted to go. So mental health is one that I want to see us working on. And then the other piece that I'd really like to see us tackling, and not so much that we need to be into the building and development side, but as a government, what can we be doing to alleviate some of the housing? And that does mean partnerships with the town, with the city, and figuring out how do we entice more developers. You got a supply and demand problem on a couple of different levels. Developers can pick and choose which projects they do now, and they pick the ones that are making the most money, which means the other projects kind of put to back burner over and over again. So there is some interest to figure out how do we address that, how do we bring in more developers, and what can we do, what kind of packages and incentives can we create that's going to make affordable house building more affordable.
So are you willing to commit to increased funding for the mobile mental health crisis team?
I have to, as a party, that's something that we're in favor of. It's a matter of, do we have the votes, and is there something that we have a definable structure and a smart goal? Do we have a plan for how we're going to use the money? I don't want to just throw it. I want to make sure that it's we need this staff member, or we want this program, or we need these supplies. That's important for me when we're going into a budget season of kind of committing funds to it rather than just kind of open-ended. That we want the more money. I want to see those programs in place. I want to see the services expanded. Some of the disappointment that I do know is that our kind of response team, our crisis response team, more often than not, meets people at the hospital rather than in their home. And part of what they were created for was to make sure that we can kind of divert people away from the hospital. So We don't run that team, but it really would be nice to have those conversations and figure out how do we make that kind of a more efficient.
I mean, do you think it's worth for the county to have a conversation with the local hospitals and be like, hey, you're a private hospital, we need to be having these teams out in the community, you guys need to have your own kind of
I
team
think
to
it is worth
handle
having
this?
those conversations. It'll be.
'Cause I know it's a huge amount of calls that are going there.
Yep. And it will be interesting. The new restructuring of the BHCC is still sort of unfolding. I think there's some potential for having kind of more in-depth and real conversations with them, whereas the way it was structured before, there's a lot of report giving, not a whole lot of like knuckle down planning. And that's what we're looking for from these experts who are in the field that should be using that. So yes, I would love to see us putting more money into that and it being kind of functioning the way that it was designed.
Okay. And my last question is, do you have any proposals to solve the unhoused crisis or the increase in homeless encampments?
To solve that,
Do you have anything to help try and help unhoused people or address the homeless
again,
encampments?
and that is something that the county has been hearing. There's issues that the city of Bloomington is looking at some solutions. Once you start getting in and trying to figure out how do we nail that down and what do the specifics look like, it can get very, very complicated. Lots of different iterations of what that would look like for temporary or transitional housing. But they are definitely, like, that conversation is happening. And if there are things that the county can do to support that, I would 100% be behind it. We need housing for people. And there are too many people that are in these encampments that are really just struggling, need that support. When they're safer and when they are more stable, it's better for the whole community.
All right. Well, thank you so much. You have a good rest of your night.